Sir, you've been leaving the exact same crisp $20 bill on table 4 every single morning at 7:30 sharp.
The young waitress said with a gentle, inquisitive smile, holding up the clean note in the soft, golden morning light streaming through the damp coastal window. I just have to ask, why $20 every single morning? Your Earl Grey tea and almond croissant only cost $6, and you never wait around for change. I slowly looked up from the high-resolution digital schematics displayed on my tablet screen, locking eyes with Clara's bright, curious gaze and feeling a sudden, heavy wave of vivid memory wash over my chest. A memory of a freezing, desperate winter night 7 long years ago that she knew absolutely nothing about. I didn't give her an immediate explanation because the timing wasn't right, and the profound debt of honor I carried toward her family was far too complex and emotionally heavy to be summarized in a quick, casual exchange right before the frantic morning breakfast rush began. Instead, I simply picked up my hand-stitched leather briefcase from the red vinyl booth, buttoned my tailored charcoal wool jacket, and turned toward the heavy glass doors of the Harbor Light Café, pausing right at the threshold to look back over my shoulder at her. "One day, Clara," I said softly, keeping my voice completely level, calm, and absolute. "I promise I will tell you everything." I stepped out into the chilly, salt-scented morning air of the foggy Ohio waterfront, leaving her watching my reflection through the glass pane, completely unaware that my daily $20 tip was not an arrogant display of casual wealth or patronizing corporate pity, but a sacred personal oath forged in a moment of utter despair when her late father saved my life from complete destruction. My name is Lucas Sterling. Today, I am the principal director, founder, and majority shareholder of Sterling Architectural Group, a multi-million-dollar corporation specializing in commercial high-rises and historic waterfront restoration projects across the Midwest. To the financial press, corporate competitors, and elite real estate boards, I am known as an uncompromising, razor-sharp strategist who evaluates business opportunities with total discipline and zero emotional vulnerability. But 7 years ago, I was completely penniless and broken. I was a 23-year-old university graduate whose first independent structural engineering startup had been systematically dismantled and bankrupted by a fraudulent senior business partner who drained our corporate accounts, fled the jurisdiction, and left me personally carrying over $85,000 in predatory legal liabilities. I was formally evicted from my tiny basement apartment. My personal accounts were frozen with a closing balance of 4 cents, and I sat shivering in that exact same window booth at the Harbor Light Café with a torn coat, an empty stomach, and a spirit completely crushed by the cold weight of failure. That evening, as I stared blankly at the scratched wooden tabletop, contemplating surrendering my architectural ambitions forever and taking a minimum wage manual labor job, an older craftsman sitting alone at the diner counter noticed my quiet distress. Without asking for my backstory or making a scene in front of the other patrons, the kind gentleman quietly ordered a large bowl of hot chicken soup and a fresh roast beef sandwich for my table, paid the cashier himself, and slipped a crisp $20 bill into my trembling palm alongside a folded paper napkin with a handwritten message. That message read, "Never surrender what you build with integrity, skill, and heart. The world always makes room for honest craftsmanship." That man was Thomas Vance, Clara's father. That single $20 bill bought me the exact professional drafting paper, specialized India inks, and regional bus fare I needed to present my final university thesis defense 48 hours later, a presentation that captured the immediate attention of a major regional property developer and landed me my very first commercial renovation contract. Over the next 6 years, as I worked relentless 18-hour days to expand Sterling Architectural Group from a tiny 2-man office into a dominant regional enterprise controlling tens of millions in assets, I searched endlessly across the state for Thomas Vance, determined to repay his quiet generosity tenfold and offer him a lifetime directorship on our historical woodworking advisory board. But when my corporate investigators finally located his historic woodworking shop 11 months ago, I was heartbroken to learn that Thomas had passed away 2 years prior after a sudden, aggressive illness, leaving behind his 23-year-old daughter Clara to handle his mounting medical liabilities alone. Clara was fighting a heroic, quiet battle of her own, working grueling double shifts as a waitress at the Harbor Light Café, by day while attending the State University's architecture program by night, determined to clear her father's remaining debts and earn her degree without asking anyone in the world for charity. The moment I walked back into the diner 11 months ago and recognized Clara's striking resemblance to the framed portrait of Thomas hanging proudly behind the cash register, I swore a silent, unbreakable vow. I pledged to watch over her from a distance, leaving a crisp $20 bill on table 4 every single morning as a daily personal reminder of the debt of honor I carried, ensuring she had a subtle financial cushion without ever making her feel like a helpless recipient of corporate pity. The moment I pushed open the glass entrance of the Harbor Light Café and stepped out into the freezing November downpour that morning, my calm morning demeanor completely vanished, replaced by the calculating, hyper-focused posture my board of directors knew me for. I climbed into the rear passenger seat of my black executive town car, pulled out my encrypted mobile phone, and immediately dialed my head of legal affairs and vice president of corporate acquisitions at Sterling Group. I instructed them to freeze every single pending joint architecture contract we held with Vance and Cross Holdings and begin an immediate stealth financial audit into their parent debt structure before their senior executives even realized they were under targeted observation. Vance and Cross operated on the arrogant assumption that an elderly diner owner and a young university student lacked the financial clout and high-powered legal backing to contest a land transfer in county court, completely unaware that the historic coastal building they planned to demolish housed the spirit and memory of the man who rescued me when I was penniless and broken. Over the next 2 weeks, while Clara spent exhausting midnight hours studying for her final university architectural examinations under the weak yellow glow of her apartment lamp, and Mr. Higgins quietly started assembling cardboard boxes behind the counter, my legal team worked 20-hour shifts across 3 regional banking institutions to locate every defaulted commercial mortgage note and high-interest credit line tied to Vance and Cross Holdings. Despite the intense corporate chess match unfolding behind closed doors, my morning routine remained completely untouchable. Every single day at 7:30 sharp, regardless of whether I had spent the night in emergency board meetings or negotiating debt acquisitions with bank directors in the city, I walked through the glass doors of table 4, hung my dark wool coat on the brass rack, ordered my Earl Grey tea, and left that exact same crisp $20 bill beside my teacup. Sitting in that booth gave me a rare moment of absolute focus before entering the high-pressure boardroom battles of the day, and watching Clara's quiet resilience as she served local fishermen with genuine warmth despite her heavy heart reinforced my absolute resolve to ensure that Thomas Vance's legacy would never be flattened by corporate greed. My investigators soon discovered that Vance and Cross's flagship skyscraper project relied on an aggressive commercial line of credit that required a strict capital refinancing milestone in less than 30 days, a vulnerability that meant if a single major creditor acquired their underlying debt liabilities, their entire multi-million-dollar venture would fall under direct executive control. I immediately authorized our firm's treasury to liquidate high-yield bond portfolios and consolidate our private capital reserves, preparing a massive, silent counter-acquisition that would place 52% of their parent trust's voting equity directly into my hands before the eviction notice expired. With the 30-day refinancing milestone approaching for Vance and Cross Holdings, I initiated an aggressive, high-stakes financial operation across 3 major regional investment funds, utilizing Sterling Group's liquid reserves to systematically absorb their underlying debt. Every single evening, after completing 14 grueling hours of corporate strategy meetings and reviewing forensic accounting files, I met with my senior litigators to ensure that every single mortgage note transfer was executed in complete secrecy. Vance and Cross remained completely blind to the trap closing around them, arrogantly celebrating their upcoming multi-million-dollar skyscraper project in local trade journals, while publicly boasting that no small-town opposition could ever delay their commercial expansion along the waterfront. Yet, despite the immense physical and mental strain of directing a covert multi-million-dollar corporate buyout behind the scenes, my morning routine remained absolutely sacred. At 7:30 sharp every single morning, I pushed open the heavy glass doors of the Harbor Light Café, hung my coat by the entrance, and sat at table 4 by the window, watching the rain strike the glass while Clara brought my Earl Grey tea with effortless grace. Observing her balance exhausting late-night architecture classes with her demanding morning shifts without ever uttering a single word of complaint filled me with profound respect, hardening my absolute determination to protect her father's legacy from being erased. As the final weeks ticked away, Mr. Higgins began carefully packing away vintage brass light fixtures and hand-carved oak panels that Thomas Vance had built with his own hands decades ago, his eyes filled with quiet sorrow, while Clara quietly wiped down the counters, determined to maintain her dignity until the very last hour. On the cold, gray Tuesday morning, when the 90-day notice officially expired, 2 arrogant senior executives from Vance and Cross Holdings arrived at the Harbor Light Café, accompanied by a local deputy sheriff and an eviction officer, carrying formal clipboards and demanding that Mr. Higgins surrender the master keys immediately, so heavy demolition excavators idling down the street could breach the perimeter. Clara stood shoulder to shoulder with the elderly owner, her eyes filled with quiet pain as Mr. Higgins reached into his coat pocket with trembling hands, completely helpless against the relentless machinery of corporate greed. But just before the lead developer could grab the brass keyring, a sleek black luxury sedan pulled up to the curb outside, its tinted glass doors opening as I stepped out onto the damp pavement, tailored in a charcoal suit, carrying a heavy leather document portfolio and flanked by 2 of the state's most formidable corporate litigation attorneys. I walked through the glass doors with calm, undeniable authority, instructing the enforcement officers to step away from the counter without delay. The lead executive scoffed, raising his voice to assert that no small-town diner owner or university student possessed the legal standing to delay a court-sanctioned commercial demolition. But I calmly opened my portfolio and presented a certified court injunction alongside a binding board restructuring resolution issued by the Chancery Court at dawn. As of 6 o'clock this morning, Sterling Architectural Group acquired controlling voting equity and majority debt liabilities in Vance and Cross's parent trust, I declared, my voice echoing with absolute precision through the quiet room. My very first executive directive as primary board chairman is the immediate cancellation of this redevelopment project, the termination of your employment contracts, and the complete preservation of this historic property. As my legal team served the stunned developers with formal notices of default and forced them off the premises in total humiliation, I turned to Clara and Mr. Higgins, finally revealing the secret I had carried close to my heart for 7 years, laying down the original paper napkin and the faded $20 bill her father had passed to me when I was broke and hopeless, explaining how Thomas Vance's random act of kindness had saved my life, and how my daily tips were a sacred vow to restore her family's legacy. Following the immediate retreat of Vance and Cross's disgraced executive team from the premises, I didn't waste a single moment consolidating the legal protections required to safeguard the Harbor Light Café indefinitely. I directed my senior attorneys to draft an irrevocable property trust that officially transferred total ownership of the historic waterfront building directly into the joint management of Mr. Higgins and Clara, placing the land entirely beyond the reach of corporate land speculators and ensuring that no predatory development firm could ever threaten their establishment again. As Mr. Higgins wept tears of profound relief behind the counter, staring in complete awe at the signed legal deeds, I turned to Clara and handed her a formal corporate proposal bearing the official gold crest of Sterling Architectural Group. Having secretly reviewed her brilliant university thesis projects on historical coastal restoration, I offered her a full equity partnership at my firm immediately upon her graduation, creating a brand new historic preservation department designed specifically for her to direct with total creative freedom and a multi-million-dollar operational budget. For the next several months, as Clara completed her final academic semester with top honors, we worked side by side, transforming her father's original vision into reality, carefully designing a master restoration plan for the Harbor Light Café that preserved every piece of hand-carved oak paneling Thomas Vance had crafted decades ago, while modernizing the infrastructure to serve the community for generations to come. During those long evenings spent reviewing architectural blueprints over hot tea and booth, 4 after the diner closed, the quiet professional respect between us evolved into a deep, unbreakable emotional bond as Clara realized that my daily $20 tips had never been an act of condescending charity, but the silent expression of a man who held her family's honor higher than his own corporate empire. 1 year after that emotional morning when Vance and Cross was forced to retreat, the Harbor Light Café stood fully restored, gleaming under the bright spring sunshine, with fresh ocean breezes blowing through its wide-open windows. The grand reopening was a massive celebration for the entire coastal community, attended by hundreds of townspeople, local business owners, and craftsmen who had known Thomas Vance. On the wall directly above table 4, framed in solid polished mahogany, hung the original paper napkin note and the worn $20 bill that Thomas had given me 7 years prior, serving as a permanent testament to the power of unsung integrity. Standing beside the window overlooking the harbor, I looked into Clara's eyes. She was now a licensed lead architect at Sterling Architectural Group, co-directing our historic preservation projects while managing the Diners Trust alongside Mr. Higgins. Reaching into my jacket, I pulled out a small velvet box, knelt on one knee, and held up an exquisite diamond engagement ring. Clara, 7 years ago, your father gave me hope when I had nothing, and today you have given me a purpose I never thought I would find, I said softly as the entire room went completely quiet. Will you marry me and build the rest of our lives together? Through tears of overwhelming joy and happiness, Clara smiled warmly, nodded her head, and said yes as the entire diner erupted into deafening applause and cheer.